One aspect of this lesson will be exploring perception. Perception is how we select, organize, and interpret information that's usually based upon our past experiences and present feelings and circumstances. A lot of things that you will be doing in this assignment might feel a little personal, so please disclose to the level you feel comfortable disclosing and that you think I'm going to feel comfortable hearing. And just remember that whatever is shared between you and me will stay between you and me. But I just wanted to make that point really clear because this will feel a little personal. How we communicate is based upon our perception. So I wanted to take a couple of minutes and just walk you through some key aspects of perception in this mini lesson here. So perception again is based upon past experiences and present feelings and circumstances. It's how we select, organize, and interpret information. And this can be both verbally and non-verbally. We are really looking at perception today through the communicative lens. There are things related to psychology and sociology that influence our perception, but we're really looking at it through the standpoint of communication and how that affects the way that we communicate and our interpretations of the interactions with others that we're communicating with. So here's an example of perception. If you were to look at this image, what is the first image you see? Do you see a young woman or an old woman wearing a scarf on her head? Do you see both? Well, based upon how you select, organize, and interpret the image will affect how you see it. So if at first, like when I first look at it, I see a woman in a fancy coat with this cool looking like hat on, and just kind of looking very stylish and staunch. But I can also then, if I change the way I look at it, I can see an older woman with a bigger nose. She looks like she has a scarf on her head, but she's still in that puffy jacket. But it's all based upon how I select, organize, and then interpret the information. And that is basically what perception is. This first step, selection, concentrates the focus on some sort of stimuli. For example, if you just saw an elderly man or, an elderly woman, if we go back to the image there, an elderly woman or the young woman, it's because you focused on what we call figure and ground. So what you were looking at in the image, whatever became the figure, whether it was the young woman or the old woman, everything else became the ground and vice versa, because that's how we selected that one piece of information to really focus on. External factors play a role in how we select information through the communicative lens. So whether somebody is tall or short, they can be more memorable because they're out of the ordinary. The same can be said for attitudes. We pay attention to contrast or change. So when we hear pieces of information, depending upon the relationship that we have with the person, that can affect how we select and then interpret and organize the information. So selecting is that first step with the stimuli. Next is organization. So this is where we categorize, if you will, and we are determining based upon categorization physical constructs such as young, old, pretty, ugly. We also look at this through role constructs, so social positions such as student, teacher, wife, spouse, sister. The next step is through interaction constructs, so we look at social behavior for that. This is how we decide whether somebody is friendly or helpful or aloof. And lastly are the psychological constructs. Those are those internal states of mind and the dispositions that we have. So if we're confident, we're going to organize an interaction that we're having with somebody in a more confident way. On the latter side of that, if we're not a confident individual, we have a maybe we're feeling a little insecure when it comes to interpersonally communicating, how we organize interpretation is going to be influenced based upon that psychological construct that we have of ourself. And then lastly is interpretation. And interpretation, this is how we make sense of the interaction. For example, if a person smiles across the room at us, we select, organize, and then attempt to interpret what that smile means. And that interpretation is going to be based upon solely how we organize it through physical constructs, sociological constructs, and psychological constructs. So that's really what the perception process is about: selecting, organizing, and then interpreting information. So let's take a look at this with some images here. All right, what do you see here? You should see what looks to be maybe a 12-year-old girl in a driver's seat, looking up at whomever is taking the picture. Our perception of this image is going to be based upon how we select, organize, and interpret the information. So my stimuli, I'm focusing on the girl, and I'm going to organize going, okay, there are probably many things that are happening, but right away I'm going, why is she in the driver's seat? She's too young to be driving, right? Because that's what my construct says. So based upon, again, just how we select, organize, and then interpret the information to make sense of what we see. What influences what we see and how we organize it affect how we interpret it as well. So another aspect of perception might be, in this case, what we see. So this is a cultural aspect, right? These women are from the Middle East, and in their culture, women are to be covered because they're sacred from head to toe, right? And so if we were to see this image, we attempt to select, organize, and then interpret the information based upon what we see. This also will influence our interaction that we have with the person. Next is sex and gender roles. Influence our perception. So whatever our sex and our gender roles are, what we deem them to be, can influence the interactions that we have with other people. Occupational roles also affect our perception. The paradigm of occupational roles is changing thanks in part to a large push with the STEM program. So that involves sciences and math and technologies and that sort of thing. But depending upon our perception of the person that we're interacting with and the occupational role they have, we attempt to select, organize, and interpret information, then base assumptions off of that, which is in part based upon our past experience and our present feelings and circumstances. So that's just a little bit about perception, kind of giving you a broad view of some important aspects of how perception works, as well as how that can influence our interaction that we have with other people. If you have any questions, let me know. You can email, call, or stop by. Thanks.